नित्यशेष सर्वभाषकम् भावषट्कहीनरूप नित्यसत्यमद्वयम् वाङ्मनोति गोचरं च नेति नेति भावितम् तं नमामि देवदेव रामकृष्णमीश्वरम्. Namaste to all. As Sudhakarji rightly pointed out, basically all these discussions or swadhyaya readings, they are actually meant for implementation in our lives. Because one unfortunate thing about spirituality is that mostly it remains at the discussion level, and if it further deteriorates, it comes to argument level. That was the reason why Sudhakarji said that let us put more light, more stress on the practice aspect of it. Man is a becoming. He is a work in process. Unfortunately, not remembering this or not knowing this, for no fault of his, he continues his restless activity to possess things, to build relationships, and most of the time, instead of getting, let us say, satisfaction or fulfillment, all he gets is empty hands. Because the reason is, we set up goals. And having set up goals, we definitely work for it, put a lot of effort for it, and achieve it. And probably the euphoria of success lasts. And then again, the quest begins for more and more things, more and more relationships, better relationships, and so on. It is as if amidst all the pleasure, is there any fulfillment? Amidst all our effort, all our restless effort, is there any rest? Such questions begin to creep into our minds. If they have crept in, it's very, very good. It's a welcome change. That is the position which Rama was in. He said, amidst all this change, is there anything permanent? Is there anything eternal? And why is it? Rama said that why is it that we are not getting the satisfaction? Why is it that we are not able to, in spite of all our efforts, why is it that we are not getting the satisfaction, fulfillment? I'd like to start the session with a very beautiful parable of Rabia al-Adabiya, who was a woman, Sufi saint. She was an old lady and she used to live in a hut. And she used to always wear those, patched up clothes. And she was sewing her cloth. And it is said that the thread was so less and the needle fell out of the thread and fell on the floor. Being old, she started searching on the floor. And then as and when the night drew in, it became twilight. There was very little light. So she came out. There was a street light, burning light, because every day somebody used to come and light that up. She came and started searching for the needle under the light. Somebody came and they said she was a very venerable old lady, respected. So since she was searching something, they all started helping. The people who came on the road, passing by, they started helping her without asking what she was searching for. That's the condition which we are all in. They all started. And then finally, a youth asked her, Grandma, what is it that you are searching? She said, I'm searching for my needle. Then again, everybody started, oh, they got a particular thing which is to be searched. So they started searching for it. And after a lot of time, the youth who had asked the question, he said, where did you drop it? You just tell me the exact location so that we'll search in that area only. It is said, Rabia waited for some time so that everybody became silent. And she said, I had lost it in my hut. Everybody started laughing. If you had if you had lost the needle in your hut, why is it that you are searching on the street? Again, she waited. She said, because there is light here. When again people started laughing, she said, what she said was very, very important, and it's always important for all of us. She said, that's what all of you are doing. You have a treasure inside, treasure cove inside. You have light within. You have wisdom within. You have everything within. And where are you searching? You are searching outside because there is light outside. Vasishtha responded, not with this example, but he responded saying, the direction which you are searching is wrong. It's different. It's diametrically opposite. You are searching for the things outside, and actually you should start searching for it within. What is happening now? The technological advances, the sciences really leaps and bounds its progressing. And we are finding out newer and better means of survival, newer and better information which is there. And as and when we go on increasing our knowledge, actually it is information, increasing our information, it appears to get more and more complicated and more wide, infinite. So Vasishtha says that you look for one principle within, and with that one principle, everything else is achieved. That is when Rama started learning from Vasishtha. And when such points are given, such information is given, that information remains as a knowledge unless and until we start practicing what has been heard. Every time we hear that it's difficult. Yes, it is very difficult. Why? It's because all the time during whole of our evolution, we have been searching for our survival outside. And that habit of searching outside has remained, it has become so stubborn. We still feel that the rules that are outside also apply within our search within. Actually, the rules totally are different. For getting things outside, you must put a lot of effort. I mean, much more effort. More the effort, the more objects you will get, more things you will achieve, more goals you will reach. But the satisfaction, the rest which you are seeking in your restless activity, the treasure which you are seeking is all impermanent. Why? Not because the treasure is impermanent, because we are impermanent. We are not permanent. We come, enjoy for some time, seek the pleasures for some time, and then pass on. In Hindi, there is a very beautiful word which has been coined by Guru Nanak Dev, and later on Kabir and other people. He says, this whole world is a sarai. Sarai means an inn, wayside inn. Nanak says, don't make this sarai your home. It's only a rest house for the night. You're traveling, stay for the night, take rest for some time, and then leave that sarai and then proceed further, go further. Only then you'll be able to you will be able to get what you're seeking. And the beautiful thing is, paradoxical thing is, for the inner thing which we are seeking, to get that, we have to we have to go on reducing the effort which we put. Because all the time, rest, relax. This relaxation is to be achieved. And since we are not used to it, since we are used to only effort and seeking, our method is wrong and our direction is wrong. So in the first prakarana, or the third prakarana, Utpatti prakarana, first one was Vairagya, when Rama expressed his doubts. And the second one was Vasishta's response to it, saying that what are the things which are required for you to seek, for you to enter this world of spirituality. He told them, Mumukshu Prakaranam, Mumukshu Vivahara Prakaranam. A person who seeks liberation, who aspires to get himself revelated, get himself enlightened, what are the things which he requires? And I go on repeating that. 4 things. These 4 things are to be practiced till the end and probably even after. What is that? Sweet patience, vichara, santosha, and sadhusanga. The moment you start becoming patient, because I told you, we put effort and we expect the result to come immediately. That's not possible here. We have to put effort to be silent. We have to put effort to relax, because our habit has to be changed. That is why he said, Shubha Vasanas. Change your habits. And having changed your habits, you'll slowly be able to get involved. And that is the reason why our sages were extremely compassionate. They didn't want to complicate things. They said, you start from where you are. You start from your position. You don't bother about what other people have achieved. You bother about yourself and start from where you are. They said, most of us, or almost all of us, we are conscious of our body and we think we are the body. Some of the people are conscious also, not only of the body, but also of their mind. Mind with its desires, its dreams, its worries, its concerns, its goals, its jealousy. They are conscious of that, and then they feel, I am that. They identify with that mind. And the third, the fortunate ones who have reached, they have identified with the cosmos. Now the effort is to slowly become conscious of our bodies. We should become very, very aware of our bodies, but at the same time, through that awareness, start becoming conscious of the other vyapara, as it's called, other transactions which are taking place through this body. They are to be recognized, they are to be seen, and that is why keep the body still. If you keep the body still, then you will be able to see that there is some other activity going on. And so they said, you start from where you are and then start going within, going inwards. That is why most of you who are practicing asanas, you become aware of your bodies. And at the same time, when you start relaxing in shavasana or in meditative postures, you start becoming aware of your breath. Breath is also, in fact, that's a very conscious thing which we are aware of. Then probably, if you're fortunate enough, if you're patient enough, I may use that instead of saying fortunate, if you're patient enough, you'll be able to see there is one more facet, one more faculty that is there, the activity of prana, activity of energy. It's not the energy as such, as the physical energy as such, it's pranic energy. And after becoming aware of that, so it's a whole process which is going inwards. Be patient so that you will be able to wait eternally if you want, and slowly and steadily you'll be able to understand, you'll become able to be conscious. And once you sit for meditation, you'll be definitely, in fact, all of us will be aware of our minds, our complicated minds, which is basically a restless activity, a flow of thoughts. It's like a river. You become aware of the flow of thoughts. It's changing from one to the other, and it goes on and on and on and on. For example, I'll give you an example. We are seeing something. The moment we see an object, it's not the only object we are seeing. The moment we see the object, the mind will start working. I had seen this somewhere. It is this. And along with that, all the other pertaining thoughts, they start coming. So mind is basically restless, basically chanchalize, restless, random. It goes from one to the other, one to the other. When we know the excess restlessness of mind, you have put one more step. You have become aware of the mind. Normally, I used to make fun of teachers who used to say that my subject alone is very, very difficult. When we were working for a school, they used to say that my subject is extremely difficult. I used to say that means you are not a good teacher. Why? Actually, you should tell your students that this is the easiest subject. Why? Because you're so thorough with the subject that you don't find it difficult. It means that you are finding your subject difficult. Similarly, I say that if somebody says that mind is very difficult, impossible to control, then I say that there is something wrong. Krishna says, yes, definitely it is difficult. He uses the word difficult, but through abhyasa and vairagya you can conquer it. Abhyasaina tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. It's true. Asamshayam mahabaho. It's definitely, it's beyond doubt that mind is difficult to control. But I say that the outside external effort is so much, it's not so difficult. Only you be patient. Then second thing is, you start thinking about it. You start analyzing certain things. So once you start analyzing your life, once you start analyzing what is happening within, you'll be able to get contentment. I'll give you a very beautiful tenet or axiom which Eknathji used to give us. He used to tell that when you are going to the market, he gave a very down-to-earth example. Whenever you go to the market, first of all, you make a list of items at home. Maybe there are 4 or 5 items. And then look at that list and then find out whether any of these things, these 4 items, will I die without them? He would use this word. Will I die without buying them? Is it extremely necessary that I need these items? And say invariably, out of 4, 2 or 3 items will be struck off by you. Then you come to the first item. Then you say that if I cannot do without it. Then you proceed to the market. And then you ask yourself, he used to say, ask yourself, can I get it instead of 400 rupees thing? Can I get it for 40 rupees? Or can I get it below 100 rupees? What is he telling? What is Mani Eknathji asking us? It's vichara. Think about it. You start thinking logically whether I need this, whether I don't need it. The Viveka and Vichara, they go together. Viveka is you differentiate between what is essential and what is non-essential. And once you do that, you'll be able to definitely do Vichara, because Vichara comes little later on when you are able to find out what is eternal and what is temporary. And once that happens, Santosha has to follow. Santosha is again a step at the same time. It's a goal. It is reached by the sadhaka, because he says, I don't require so much. The moment he starts thinking in this direction, then he'll get santosha, contentment. Why do you require contentment? Because mind always seeks that which is not. If I have something, I'll never think about it. I never give second thought to it. But I always start thinking. The mind always wants something which is not there. So contentment is the one which slows the mind down, which is so less, which is so fast. Many a time we find that I get a desire, I get a thought, and immediately I proceed. Or these days you have this online sales company, this thing, you just click and then you get that object, whether it's really necessary or not. So contentment gives some kind of control to the mind. And when these three things are there, then grace comes, sadhu sangha comes. So that the second chapter, I think, second prakarana, mumuksha prakarana, we have to think, hear, read as many times as possible. The more we think about it, we'll find that we'll be able to control our mind. And once we are able to slow the mind down, then we'll be able to proceed. Otherwise, I told you, if we sit for meditation, I think if I'm not mistaken, that's the second session which we had. I had mentioned the example of coming from outside sun, midday sun, getting into the house. What happens? It's all darkness. You be patient, you'll be able to see the things inside after some time, because the eyes will get used to that darkness as well. So patience is always there. That's the first step. And follow these steps so that you'll be able to practice. Again, you fix a time. You find build a routine for yourself. You have a routine for yourself, maybe for 15 minutes, maybe for 20 minutes. You spend every day in the morning and in the evening, if possible. And when you do that, you'll find that the mind has become more pliable. You have these children play with this plastic clay, with which they make a lot of these clay things and forms, so that they learn. So they learn this finger dexterity also. So mind becomes pliable. It comes under control. It becomes your friend. Once having done that, then alone we'll be able to come to the next prakarana, which we are going to take up today, which is called as Sthiti Prakarana. One question is asked at the beginning of this prakarana. The question is, yes, the mind has born. The eye has it has bifurcated, or it has differentiated from the eyes. We have developed eye and mind. In fact, the whole story of mind or whole story of origin of mind is I and mine. You just notice the thoughts which go on. Observe the thoughts. It's always concerned with I and mine. I and mine. So now, having come to this position, what should we do? Will we not be able to trace that I which sage Muni Vasishta is telling us to do? So sage comes to our level. He says, don't worry. You have this I, it has solidified, it has become, so allow it. Only thing is, you make it, take certain steps. Through those certain steps, what will happen is, this I will become more controllable. Not only those practices, now he gives certain very beautiful stories. He gives 5 stories in this Sthiti Prakarana, where the I-ness or I am, that thing, it goes on increasing, and at the same time, he gives, Vasishta Muni gives, what are the qualities of this thing, so that you can come back to the original state, or go back. We have to go back. For them, it is coming back. For us, it's going back to ourselves, our own self, which is eternal, which is always blissful, which is wisdom itself, which is light itself. How to go back? So for that, let us understand the Sthiti Prakarana, which we'll deal now. First of all, he says that he gives the story of Shukra. Shukra, it's a very small story. Shukra is the son of Bhrigu Rishi. Most of us would have heard of Bhrigu Rishi. He's one of the first rishis of the Rishi Saptakam, the 7 Saptarishis. He had a son named Shukra. And it is said that both of them were they were doing tapas on a mountain. And Bhrigu was an accomplished Rishi, so he went into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Now, Shukra is to be noted here. Shukra he is approximately in our position. Shukra he had advanced, no doubt. He was able to look within. He was able to recognize certain things, certain activities. He was able to stop that activity. But unfortunately, he had not reached the final stage as his father. So, Vasishta Muni says, Shukra was in a position of Trishanku. He uses the word Trishanku here. That is, neither was he totally away from the world, nor was he off the world. He was in between. And when he was in between, he opened his eyes. Now, I was giving you the example earlier. He opened his eyes, and his eyes fell on a woman, on a lady, a divine lady. Just by seeing her, he felt a desire for her. And it is said, he went to that place. She was a lady from Devaloka. He went there, he spent some time. Then he went on falling from his position down to a deer. Then he became a human being. Then he became a sadhaka. It went on. He took so many births. And he became one son of a Brahmin known as Brahmin, and his name was Vasudev. And he was sitting on the bank of Ganga, again doing penance. In the meantime, it's almost like a script writer. Vasishta Muni says that what was happening here on that mountain? Rishi came from his Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and to his surprise, shocking surprise, he found his son lying beside him. He had become a skeleton. He had died. He was not there. And as most of us know, Bhrigu was a person who had his anger on his nose tip, extremely angry, volatile anger. He immediately summoned through his power Yama, the god, lord of death. And he said that, how is it that you took away my son? Because he was not supposed to die. How did you take him? So Yama said, in all patience, said, my lord, Bhagavan, look at what really happened. I am not responsible for his death. He is. It's his responsibility to the position which he is in. Raghu looks at that skeleton and then he is able to see what had happened. Immediately, that's the beauty of these enlightened souls. Immediately, he says, "I'm very sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I was carried away by my son, and that's why I shouted at you. Nothing." Then Yama tells him, "Let us. He's now he's a sadhaka. We'll go to him." They go to him and then revive him and then they bring him back. That's the story. Now, what is the principle of this story? The first and foremost, it's a hint, it's an axiom which is given by Vasishtha Muni to all sadhakas. Take the responsibility for everything that happens in your life. It's there because you wanted it. You asked for it. You willed it. You are responsible for it. Unless and until you take the responsibility on yourself for it, nothing will change. Because what's our habit? Normally, what's our habit? What do? We always take the credit for what something nice says. I work. Suppose I get 80. Children get 99%. A child gets 99%. He says, why did he get 99%? He got that because of his effort. If a child fails in the examination, the teachers are not right. The school is not giving proper ambience. This is our habit. Whatever happens, never for the bad things, never for the things, unexpected things. We always put it on. Finally, we say that it's my fate. So, Vasishtha Muni is telling us, take on the responsibility. These hints are necessary now, even. Maybe we are not able to go with it. But this is the hint which is given. Become responsible. When you take on the responsibility, then you'll stop blaming the world. You'll stop having that the negative attitude towards the world as such. That you say that, Nani, it's okay, no problem. Since it's my responsibility, I'm willing to take it. I'll take it on myself. I'm ready to bear it, whatever the consequences. First thing is that take on the responsibility for yourself. Second thing is, sorry, when we are, it's very natural for us to fall. It's very natural. None of us started walking in the first step which we took. We have always fallen, but we have risen. We fall, we rise. Whenever we learn bicycle, we didn't know how to balance. We have fallen, probably bruised our knees and injured ourselves, but continued that thing. It says fall is natural whenever we are progressing. Don't bother about it. Because a time will come. It doesn't matter when. The time will come when we'll realize what the direction which we are taking is, there is something wrong with it. Why? Because this great quality called as discontent, which is there in human beings. In fact, we are blessed with this discontent because it never makes us satisfied. We feel that we go on seeking for that something more. And finally, we definitely reach Prince Rama's position when we start asking questions. And that's how we come to spirituality. It is said that gives any importance to death and life. Life, as they live, as it comes, and they die. They accept it. There is no grumble. There's no complaint. They accept it. And because human beings are aware of the death, which takes them away from the things which they like or love, because of that, we start searching for something permanent. This life is evanescent, impermanent, temporary. Let us seek for something permanent. And that's when we start coming towards spirituality. So, no matter what the fall was, he gives so many births. He narrates so many births of Shukra. He becomes this, his moonbeams. And they're all, symbols of life as such. And this is exactly what happens in a very, very small manner, microscopic manner, in our dreams. Don't we see dreams within a dream within a dream? That's what the births and deaths are. And this has been narrated, this has been told by Vasishtha Muni in this Prakarana, or in this story of Shukra. And last but not the least, in this story tells us, don't despair. You can, and he gives a one wonderful hint. It's an indirect hint. He says that if you want to leave the attraction for the material world, then you'll have to look within. And when you look within, there are moments when there may be stagnation. He even gives a hint. He was neither here nor there. He was neither interested in going into, and nor was he able to leave the world as such. So this is the time when somehow or the other, the existence conspires, the providence conspires to create a situation so that it's something like a swing, Uyyal and Parille. This swing which is there, the swing will go ahead only when you go back. So it's taking a step back and then go backwards. So the hint here is, it's not given directly. The hint here is, if you are feeling stagnation when you are doing meditation, or you are not able to take the mind to meditation, don't despair. Start with the lower practice. Maybe you do pranayam. Maybe you observe the breath. Even if you are not able to breathe, maybe you do a little bit of asanas. And when you start doing it, again, you'll be able to pick up. That's what even Krishna promises. He says, even little effort if you have put towards me, the small steps which you may have taken me, they'll not go waste. In the next birth, you will start from where you had left and come back. And we need not bother about the next births as such. But when we fall, it doesn't matter. We can get up and then start the journey again. The second, I'll conclude with these two small stories, which are very, very important. Out of 5 stories, we'll be only 3 today. One of the problems of spirituality is that we unnecessarily, are eager to get rid of our negativities. That eagerness is not right. Suppose somebody is asking a question. You have master, somebody goes to the master who has been guiding him in meditation, and then says that I've been practicing for the past 6 months, for the past 1 year, or maybe for the past 10 years. I'm not seeing any progress. What is happening to me? This eagerness to achieve something, that is to be avoided. And then second hint is that don't think of negativity too much. For that, he narrates a very beautiful story. It's there was an Asuric Rakshasa. He was a Rakshasa king by name Shambara. And coincidentally, he was a magician also. So he was a master in Maya, illusions. And then he was very, very powerful. And then he defeated the gods once. And gods were, they didn't know what to do. So they went back and then started again preparing for the war. In the meantime, Shambara created 3 demons, asuras, Dama, Vyala, and Kata by name. So things, they were fearless, number one. They didn't know what death is. And they were not conscious of their bodies. So these 3 qualities, no fear, didn't, in fact, because of they didn't know what death was, they were not afraid. And the third one is they were not conscious of their bodies. So he allowed them, and then these asuras went again and attacked them, and there was mayhem, and they all went helter skelter. And then Indra went to Brahmaji and told the plight of the Devas, Suras. Brahmaji looked in. Probably it will take 1,000 years for you to win back what you are lost. In the meantime, now this is where the catch is for our seekers. In the meantime, you slowly, whenever you approach, in fact, you approach these 3 asuras, challenge them to war. But don't fight the war, just challenge them. And in the last moment, you withdraw and then disappear. They followed this. They went on challenging the 3 asuras, and gradually, as and when they started seeing that by looking at them, these devas, these gods, they were running away from them. Slowly and steadily, they started getting what is known as I. They became conscious of that I. And as and when they started thinking of I, as and when it started growing, that strength of I started growing because of repeated thought of attack from these people. They started becoming slowly, the fear started descending into them. Repeated thought or repeated challenge by the gods that made them afraid of things, scared of death. They became aware of the death. And finally, when Devendra just challenged them, it is said that out of fear, these 3 demons died. So eagerness, 1,000 years. But Brahma said, it's only a number. He said, you have to wait. You wait. Again, sweet patience. I told you it comes in different forms and different hints from different people in this scripture. The second hint was repeating. You go on giving challenge to him. Dhyayato vishayan punsaha sangastesha upajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bhijayate krodat bhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibhramaha smriti bhramsha buddhinasho buddhinashat pranashyati. Beautiful analysis of the repeated thought. They started thinking of that fear because they were reflecting. Gods were showing fear, and that got reflected in their beings because the I got created. I is only a reflector. It's not that the world is reflected by I, and that's what this scripture is trying to tell us all along. So that's how these 3 asuras were killed. So do not repeat a thought, especially a negative thought. You can repeat a positive thought, But even that positive thought is to be removed, is to be rejected later on. That position we'll discuss it in the later discussions. But as far as possible, try to be positive. Don't go on thinking about negativity, and repeated thought strengthens the I. This is the essence of the second story. The third story is Shambara was not satisfied. It's continued. The same story is continued. This time, he created three people: Bhima, Bhasa, and Drida. I'll come to the meanings of these words, the names of these Rakshasas, which will become very, very clear when it will become clear to you. Bhima, Bhasa, and Drida. He created these three Rakshasas with self-knowledge. They were self-realized. Nothing happened to them. And when nothing happened, they tried to challenge them, nothing. They didn't bother. Nothing happened. There was no change in them because they were self-realized. And it is said they went to Vishnu. The gods went to Vishnu. Vishnu came with his Sudarshan. And with this Sudarshan, he beheaded those three asuras. Very beautiful symbology. And perhaps it's very touching that he's mentioning this symbology to give us very wonderful hints. Dama, Vyala, and Kata, they are to be taken together. Kata means differentiate. It is to differentiate, which differentiates. The act of differentiation, the act of separation. I, you, me, him, they. That is differentiation. Vyala means which is vicious, which is dangerous, and which is binding. Dama is a rope. So it is the mischievous rope of division that creates bondage. It's the first story is it implies this. And Bhima, Bhasa, and Drida. Drida is stability. Bhasa is light, Prakasha. And Bhima means infinite, huge, massive. Brahattamatvad Brahman. So these three things are to be used by the sadhaka. Be aware of those three bondages and befriend these people, these three. That is, Drida means become stable-minded, control your mind, become stable. And when you control the mind, what happens? You become wise. Wisdom dawns on you. There is light, Bhasa. And when Bhasa comes, you find that it is not limited. It is infinite, Bhima. So these two stories together give us very valuable hints for control and conquest of mind. I would like to conclude by saying that let us not, let's never say that it is difficult. Let us say that it is impossible. Let us say that it is difficult, no doubt. But with little effort, I'll be able to curtail the effort. I'll be able to relax. I'll be able to slowly and steadily allow the things to drop from me. Swami Vivekananda gives very beautiful explanation of Vairagya. Vairagya doesn't mean giving up. Vairagya means accepting something higher, something nobler, something subtler, sukshma. He gives an example. He says you go to a hotel and then you ask for things what are available there. And he'll give you a big list. And then in that, suppose you select one or two items and then tell the bearer to bring those things. And suppose the bearer responds like this: Sir, You are a very great renouncer. Suppose he says that. What will you tell him? I didn't renounce anything. I chose what I wanted. I chose what I wanted. I didn't leave those things. I did not renounce those things. Similarly, he says, Vairagya doesn't mean leaving. Vairagya means catching hold of something which is nobler, which is more eternal, which is not temporal. Try to catch hold of these things, and these small things will drop on their own. Again, let us practice little by little. Let us go on thinking, and let us go on contemplating on what we have heard. Because invariably, when we hear, if you are not giving second thought to what you have heard, then invariably it passes through, it goes off. Because mind is such, we will get attracted to the things outside, which are which are definitely, they are priority in our lives. But these things are also important. So think about, contemplate on what we have heard, contemplate on what we read, and more contemplation as you do, then this contemplation becomes very natural, very easy. Wherever you go, the mind will only think of those things. We have this we have this practice of defragmentation in computers. They say that when the computer performance is slow, they advise us to defragment, because whenever we work on the computer, the files get helter-skelter, and those connected files will come together, and the computer as such starts working, working more efficiently. So similar thing is with the mind. It thinks of all the things in the world. Plus, added to this, whatever discourses or in these discussions. So let us give more thought to it, and let us all walk together and get enlightened. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raghuji. We are really, of course, that keeps coming to my mind. Application part of it is, a patient comes to me and says that she is a cancer patient, and somebody else made a statement, oh, this is not going to be all right. You will have to suffer. And with that person, when I was talking today in the morning, I said, how are you going to convince her on this aspect? People keep on making comments. And it was okay till 1 month back, and now because of these comments, and her mind has become more restless, and then again that gravity has started increasing. And I find it's, for such people, what do you suggest?
Actually, as you rightly pointed out, unfortunately, whoever visits people in terminal diseases, exactly. It's rather unfortunate with our society as such. They come with a long face, and they'll go on talking about the illness, and they'll keep telling that person that somebody died of the same illness. So this practice, this thing, unless and until this has to be stopped. That is why many people, many cancer patients are not allowed to see the visitors. They don't allow, because the topic again comes back. If not, they, at least those people who are visiting her, they'll have a very long face, as if today we'll see you, and maybe day after tomorrow we'll not see you. So the first and foremost thing is, keep them away from the visitors, number one. That has to be done. Second thing is, try to give her something positive. Try to distract the mind, which is constantly thinking of the illness as such. It's very difficult to convince such people. It's very difficult. So only thing remains is distract them, or take them to a better soothing, more soothing, let us say, thoughts, and try to give them some music. If they love music, that's the best thing. Or maybe, ask them to do some japa and all that. This is how we can do. But I think the society has to be educated, more educated than the person who is concerned, who's suffering. And the amount of affection we should give, not the attention. There is a lot of difference between attention and affection. Attention is, I'll tell you. You see, when somebody is not getting attention, they'll act as if they are sick. You understand? They act as if they are sick to get the attention. So such kind of attention, affection is to be given. That is, don't worry, we are with you. Don't bother much about it. We are along with you. We'll try to make things easy for you. You do not have to say even, we'll try to make your death easy. Don't talk about death too much. Because then again, it'll not serve the purpose. Distract them. Give them music. Try to soothe them by good thoughts. By, if possible, suppose the person is, say, an outdoor person, let's say, take her outside, maybe to the lawn or garden or something like that. Try to ask her to observe the nature, something like that. And the person who's affectionate towards them, such people, he'll be able to do wonders. And all you have to say is that this is nothing. Don't worry about it. Don't think too much about it. And even if she wants to tell something about the illness, you slowly start, obviously make her, but you try to distract her, take her, change the topic. Probably that's what we can do. Give them more affection.
Thank you, Raghuji. We will conclude with a Shanti Mantra. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.